I would like to call the Audit Committee meeting to order. It's July 9th, 2024. Can we have a roll call, please?
Chair Schutte,
Here?
Vice Chair Lambin,
Here.
Member Duke,
Here.
Member Scalia,
Here.
Member Stack.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. Number 3, public comment and discussion. The public's invited at this time to comment on and discuss any topic that is relevant to or within the authority of this public body. And I do not see any public, but anyone in the audience, if you have public comment? Okay. The next one for possible action, approval of minutes.
We should have wrote none here.
And-
There are no minutes this
and-
time since the meeting was so close.
Correct.
In June,
So,
yeah.
thank you. So stay tuned on minutes. Item number 5, meeting items. So 5A, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the monitoring, review, and closure of internal audit findings and/or recommendations included in the audit finding tracking report, and providing a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to close completed findings and/or recommendations. Sherry, take it away.
Thank you. Just a little bit of quick things here. The grants compliance internal audit, that's a few pages in. There are 2 items that I was hopeful we could close. They're just policies that we've written and they're going through review. However, they are not quite through review. So I did change that date to 9:30 and hopefully we can close them next time. In item number 3, I was wishful thinking, so I wrote updated completed and then forgot to remove that. So both of those items will come back on 9:30. And I will remove the update completed because it is not complete yet. And then on the cash handling audit, I am recommending that we close all 3 of these. I did talk to the treasurer, and the final thing we were waiting to be installed, that safe, has been completed. It was completed on June 20th. And then I talked to the public guardian, and she forwarded me the policies she has written, and it includes the items we had asked her to include. And she's gotten it current and everything, and she says that she's going to review it every 1 or 2 years to make sure it stays current, the policies. So I'm recommending closure of all 3 items.
All right. Are there any questions? I actually have one question on the review of every 1 or 2 years. Are reviews typically scheduled? So my note, I just wrote, suggest a formal scheduled review by date every year or 2 years, if that's preferred, just to ensure that that takes place.
Yeah, so if she enters the, which I did not see, they were just Word documents, but I will ask her to incorporate them in Policy Tech.
Great.
Our Policy Tech system, you can put a date in that requires you to go and look at it every year.
Wonderful.
So we'll do that.
Is everyone comfortable with that addition?
Okay.
All right. Okay, would someone like to make a motion, please?
I'll make the motion. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors closing the items discussed based on the correction of findings and recommendations included in the audit finding tracking report, specifically cash handling items 1 through 3 with the addition.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Great, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, it is unanimous. Our next agenda item, 5B, for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the draft annual risk assessment and internal audit plan for fiscal year 2025. Sherry, it's all yours.
Yes, this time it is for possible action. I'm so sorry about the last meeting. So Audrey is on the line. You can see, based on the materials given, there's 159,975 possible costs included in the 24-25 audit program, and we only have 110,000 in the budget. So unfortunately, we do have to talk about cutting a few things or moving them to next year. I did request a supplemental again, and it did not get approved. So unfortunately, we only have 110,000 to work with. So with that, I'll turn it over to Audrey, and you guys can discuss.
Welcome, Audrey.
Yes, thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, so as Sherry mentioned, the budget is at 110, and you have the document in front of you. The audit activities at the top there include roughly $15,000 worth of estimated fees. That includes the next fiscal year's risk assessment update, fraud, waste, and abuse hotline monitoring, and follow-up activities that will be performed throughout the year. And then the proposed internal audits, as you see, we discussed last time, the first one being the HR resources workforce management assessment. Purchasing and contracts management internal audit is the second one, and both of those are estimated at 35,000 or 200 hours. The third one is payroll processing, 30,000. The public guardian asset management review, 15. And the last one, take home vehicles, 25 to 30,000. So there'll be some whittling out and tabling those for possibly next fiscal year, or identifying a combination of the internal audits that are here in the plan. I know last time we spoke, the citywide take home vehicle was prioritized by the audit committee to prepare an audit work program, which we have done for this meeting, and we're prepared to identify that as an internal audit at this time and turn it over to the audit committee to identify what other proposed internal audits you'd like to include or approve the plan as it stands, and we can identify the next audit at another meeting. We can open it up for another time. We need, whatever direction you guys would like to go.
Thank you. Are there any questions? I know you had suggested several.
I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask about both the public guardian asset management and the citywide take home. And I'm kind of vague as to what they're actually doing. For the public guardian, I was asking who is a guardian, who is a ward, how many wards are there on average in the program, and how much on average is the program in terms of monetary assets, personal property, and real property.
I did respond to your email. Did you
I
not
didn't see it, I'm sorry.
receive my response? Okay. Um, So the ward is appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Their job is to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves or and have no family to take care of themselves. So, or that's the guardian, I'm sorry. The ward are appointed by the courts as not being able to take care of themselves. So the courts work with the guardian to get the ward in a housing in a situation that's comfortable. The guardian will help pay bills. They'll go to the grocery store, whatever the ward needs, basically. Pick up prescriptions. That's what the guardian does. So they
And-
have 60 to 80. Okay.
Sherry, if you'd like me to
Sure.
explain, I am, for the record, Deputy District Attorney Mihaela Niagos. I am also the attorney for the public guardian. So I just wanted to add up that in order to qualify for the services of the public guardian, so the public guardian of Carson City is appointed by the Board of Supervisors, and right now Sandra Dottie is the public guardian. In order to qualify for the services of the Carson City Public Guardian, you have to be a Carson City resident, and there is no other family member or other qualified person that is willing to serve as the guardian for the protected person. The term ward used to be in place up until, I believe, 2017 or 18, where the legislature changed the term from a ward to a protected person. In guardianship cases, a guardian can be appointed over the person or over the estate, or a combination of the person and the estate, in which case they will administer the estate of the protected person, or if it's just over the person, then they will take care of their personal affairs, like taking them to doctor's appointments and such. I don't know exactly how much money are spent for a particular protected person. I think that was one of the questions that you had, and maybe
Yeah, so the city
Sherry
has
has
a
the
budget
information.
of 356,000, and that pays for the salaries of the guardian and her staff. Most of the wards actually have Medicare or Social Security or some kind of income that comes in. The public guardian manages 60 to 80 cases at any one time. I mean, they change constantly. So, so they have separate accounts which they manage via QuickBooks of the revenues and expenses of each guardian. So it is a liability for the city if it's not managed correctly, because there's, 80 different accounts out there that the city doesn't, it's not on our books, it's on QuickBooks, it's a separate system. So, so there is a liability. It would be a good idea to look at them at some point. However, I don't think it's a giant risk right now. Like, I think that's one that we could push 1 year.
So the majority of the, call it funds, would be coming from like Medicare, Medicaid, and the application of it, as opposed to inheritance or,
Well, yes, it could be
Bank accounts.
inheritance, it could be Social Security, whatever their means are turned over to the guardian.
and so the actual liability to the city has more to do with, I wanna say
Mismanaging
cash on
funds.
deposit, kind of
Mismanaging funds, yeah.
mismanaging that as opposed to, because that's not normally replaceable, whereas, Medicare is just a constant flow.
Right, but it's mismanaging funds of a protected person, which can be a huge liability, so. So it is a liability, but like I said, we do have a fairly new public guardian. She's over, the city manager keeps a close eye on her. I don't think it's critical that we do it right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
there is also a requirement that estates that are over $10,000, they go to court yearly for a hearing on accounting. And there's also, each protected person has an attorney that is appointed for them. and that person advocates for the protected person, then they have access to the accountings that are done on estates that are over $10,000. Most of our cases are probably summary administration, which means that they don't have to have these annual accountings because the value of the estate is much smaller. It's under 10,000, as I said. But there is also the court oversight if the estate is larger.
And the majority of the people we're talking about, the protected persons, would be elderly.
That is correct. Most of them are elderly, but I just wanted to emphasize, while it's true that most of them are also indigent, it's not something that would qualify them for the services of the public guardian, because there could be someone who has absolutely no one that could step in into that role and has a larger estate and qualify for the services.
Okay.
I'm not sure how many cases we have that actually have estates that are larger than 10,000. There are a few, but I would say that probably less than half, definitely less than half.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
Second one I had was for the,
Yeah, for the take-home vehicles.
second one I had to do with the take-home vehicles. And it was, on average, how many vehicles are going home? On average, what types of vehicles are they? And who generally is given a vehicle to take home and why? And,
So I think a lot of that is what we want the auditor to look into. However, I can tell you what I know, and I know that the sheriffs and fire and public works all have take-home vehicles. And I know that they typically do, like Public Works will do on-call if there's a water main break or something happens with the sewer system or there's some electrical emergency. Somebody's on call to go right away. And so it's got the sirens, it's a marked, the yellow lights, it's a marked vehicle. Police and fire, I believe most of the upper management has a take-home vehicle. And so it's actually quite a few people. I don't know a number off the top of my head, I'm sorry. I know there's a spreadsheet floating around, I haven't seen it yet, that the city manager was trying to put together. The problem we have with take-home vehicles is, the sheriff is an elected department, so he's elected, he kind of does what he wants. And then there's the fire and the public works who city manager oversees. So if we put a policy in place, we kind of need to make sure that it's approved by the audit committee, the board, and everybody's on board with following that policy. So it has to be very public. So those are, and then, because basically fire and police are public safety, right? So if they have an emergency call out, they want to be able to jump in their vehicle and go to the emergency. This all came to light because there's a few employees that live in Reno, one lives in Incline, and they have take-home vehicles. And we're questioning, is that right? Is that correct? So that's the reason for the audit, is to come up with a policy that makes sense, maybe put a range around it, like you can't live any more than 15 minutes from Carson City or something. Because if you're responding to an emergency, if you show up 45 minutes later, you're not really, are you really needed to respond to that emergency right now?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of variables that can
Right.
be included in the scope. Something that came to mind to me was if somebody is issued a take-home vehicle and they live in Reno or Incline or even in Carson, I mean, is there a contribution on behalf of the employee for the fuel costs? Because people who drive their personal vehicles to and from work, they pay their own fuel. And so that is a huge cost to the city that I think regardless of what is determined appropriate, I think fuel costs should, the employee needs to contribute because that's part of the decision of, where to live and
Yeah, well, and the wear and tear on the vehicle
the
too,
wear
when
and
you're
tear.
driving
Well,
it that
that's
much. So,
another discussion and all, yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
So, yeah, so like I said, these are things that we want the auditor to kind of dig into and get to the bottom of to help us come up with that policy and then implement it.
My questions had a little more to do with the fact that we're looking at $160 versus $110,000, and the $50,000 we're going to be carving out, and you know, that the size of what we're looking to protect as far as the guardians, and you know, that there is a codified policy for who gets a car and why. I mean, I realize that, you know, upper management, it's a perk for you know, the day-to-day person. I don't see him taking a waterworks truck to go get a gallon of milk. Could happen, but it's just not a convenience thing. And if there was a large number of private passenger vehicles that were unmarked, then that becomes more of an issue. But again, I'm kind of focused on what I think of as being important for that $50,000 we have to lose for this year.
Yeah, well, and I can tell you, it's not just upper management, it's pretty much
I'm
all
sorry?
it's not just upper management, it's pretty much all.
No, I'm just
Management.
looking at my own personal experience. I mean,
Yeah.
I've had company cars, I've not had company cars, and there were a
Right.
lot of reasons behind it. There was a lot of codification for it, and for that matter, since I did have a car that belonged to the company, I also technically needed to report that income on my income tax.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there is an exclusion for marked vehicles.
Mhm.
So yeah, again, we're just trying to get a handle on this and make sure it's fair, that it's applied fairly between all the departments.
I got a couple. One's on your vehicles. From experience, I know like fire, the bat wagons normally go home because the battalion chief has to boogie. But on public works trucks, especially if you live in Carson, the yard, this isn't that big that the yard's that far. Our guys would come in from all over the county to hit our yard at Waterbird for an emergency. A friend's husband was maintenance for City of Walnut Creek and a traffic electrician, but they were all on maintenance call for storms. Linda Martinez, it took him about 10 minutes to get over to Walnut Creek to pick up a truck. So I think it really does need to get looked at, just because I think a lot of times trucks are ones that are really not necessary. Like I said, I get the bat wagons, I get the sheriff's car, but on that. And I'm going to flip to a different one, which is personnel. I think that's 35 we could just carve out of the top. I'm reading this thing, and you know, the whole thing about recruiting, unless you guys have a magic money tree out back, you're not going to do it. I mean, it's hard for government. There's a lot of glam and good pay and everything else in the private sector for so many of the classifications. And I retired from a county government. And everybody's having this issue. Because why would I come straight out of college with my accounting degree to work for Carson City for $75,000 a year when I can go to Joe Blow Big Kahuna Company for at least 100 or more? You know, so I just kind of think this is 35 that could get carved out right now and for a better time, because I'm just going with the fact personnel departments are having issues everywhere.
Yeah.
As far as morale, I mean, the only magic, and I was kind of reading through some of your recruitment stuff. I mean, the only thing you can do, because everything is considered a gift of public funds, is find up some obscure holiday you don't observe and turn it into floating holiday. People love that. But I just kind of look at this and I think payroll's more important than general human resource. Because payroll is a big risk.
Yeah, I know Human Resources came up during the risk assessment because, you know, in March when they were doing the risk assessment, we were struggling to get anybody to even look at our rates because our ranges were so low. We did just have a comp study and we did just correct those ranges. So we should probably wait a year or two anyway to see where we are, you know, how everybody's feeling after this adjustment.
Yeah, because like I said, unless somebody out back has a magic money tree or a magic benefit tree or something, it's a problem for you.
Yeah.
And I understand that. But yeah, and as far as the vehicles, I think, like I said, I understand part of it, but I really do think trucks in particular need to get looked at.
Yep.
Are there other questions?
First question about the public guardian. So it says here potential risks to the process include that they're not on the treasurer's surprise cash audit list. Is there a particular reason, or was it just not set up that way originally, or?
So they're not on the treasurer's surprise cash audit because they manage so many different accounts. The treasurer is more concerned with the money that Carson City handles.
And not how we handle, I shouldn't say we, not how the city handles
Not how
public.
the public guardian handles her 80 different ward accounts, right?
Gotcha.
So I know last time we did, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago, we did do a specific public guardian review. And so it is something we've done before. It's just we've had 3 different public guardians since we've done it. So like I said, I don't think it's a bad one, but I think it is something that we can hold off for a year if we need to.
How new is this public guardian? I don't know if you mentioned that.
I think do you remember when she was appointed?
She was appointed November 7th, but prior to that, she was the deputy public guardian. So in the office, there is one appointed public guardian, and then she appoints deputies. There is just one deputy who she is newer. I believe she started in April, and the public guardian, plus her experience as a deputy, I believe is within 2 to 3 years as both, but only as the public guardian since November 7th.
So I didn't think it'd been a full year. Thank you.
So I do believe that this public guardian, it's extremely important to protect our folks that need protection, no matter who they are. Given the fact that given the fact that the guardian is so new, and it appears that the courts are involved in a lot of this stuff, I think that's one that we could probably get away with pushing a year, especially because the courts are involved. It would take a lot. You would think it would take a lot to be able to slip something under the courts or to do anything that's going to be so. I guess I'll say that crazy, especially if. Are you saying that a lot of the estates are less than 10,000? Is that what we're hearing anyway?
That is correct. I cannot give you exactly a percentage. But just to go back to the question that you had, if most of them are elderly, in order to qualify, to need a guardian, you have to have either limited capacity or to lack capacity to function. So even though, the majority are elderly, we also have vulnerable people that are much younger, and they qualified for guardianship because they have either limited or lack capacity altogether. So, but as I said, there's some other, levels of review from the courts and also from the attorneys. And that is a recent change in the law where every protected person needs to have their own appointed or retained counsel.
Thank you. And I can switch gears to that human resources one. So I was prepared to argue the point for the human resources one as I walked through the door until you had mentioned a couple of things that have sort of changed that. Because I think a couple of board meetings ago, you had mentioned that we had a lot of employees that were looking forward to that one. And so morale in this environment that we find ourselves in is extremely important, and I think that's something to focus on. But since we're at a point where there was a comp study and the pay rates were just increased, then I'm absolutely prepared to rescind that and say we can move forward on the HR one and potentially the public ward one, which is somewhere in the realm of 45,000 or 50,000.
That gets us $25 under our budget, so it's
Okay.
perfect.
Yeah. So that's the thought. I mean, the take-home vehicles are important. There are some odd ones, like if you guys, somebody had mentioned that if you're on call but you live in Incline, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. If you're on call but live in Reno, well, there's got to be somebody who lives closer. That's that on-call portion of it. So I do think that the take-home vehicles are something that we should move forward with.
Bonnie? No? All right, so it is sounding like the group, or what are your thoughts? Is everyone comfortable with postponing the public guardian asset management review as well as human resources? Is that a comfort zone, or is there another area that you would like to perhaps reduce scope and include? What? Okay. Well, would someone like to make a motion? Or try to, or I can try?
This. I move that the proposed audit of the human resource workforce management and the public guardian asset management be moved forward for at least one fiscal year.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion?
Oh, sorry, can we recommend the Board of Supervisors as part of the motion? Because we have to recommend this audit work program to the Board of Supervisors.
Where do I shove them in?
On the staff report, there's a proposed motion. So you can just read that and say the fiscal year as discussed on the record would work.
As discussed on
So,
the,
so if you can start at the beginning, and I move to recommend to the Board of
I'm
Supervisors.
trying to find the
Oh, here.
page. What page is
So-
it? 21, okay. Down the road. I don't like boards of supervisors. I used to argue with them all the time. I move to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that we move the audit for the human resource workforce management and the public guardian asset management forward for at least one fiscal year.
Does that work? And?
Yes, I'll second that.
Yes, okay.
Great.
Any other
Thank you.
discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, then the motion passes, and so Audrey, and you have that extra $25 that, don't spend it all in one place. There you go, there you go. Okay. Then we have, so we move to agenda item 5C for possible action, discussion and possible action regarding the agreed upon procedures for the Carson City Take-Home Vehicles Internal Audit Program suggested by the Carson City Manager and Carson City Internal Auditor Ide Bailey, LLP, for the fiscal year 2025 Audit Work Program. Sherry.
Thank you. So I'm probably going to get the audit work program we just discussed to the Board of Supervisors the second meeting in August, because I'm going on vacation. But I will get it to them at that second meeting. And then part of what the Board of Supervisors is going to be approving is this vehicles internal audit program. And I see no reason that they would reject it. So this item is to allow the auditor to start her work, so she doesn't have to wait till our next meeting to look at the audit program for what we were asking her to look at with take-home vehicles. So with that, I'll have Audrey go over the audit program, and you guys can discuss procedures.
All right.
Excellent. Thank you, Sherry. And thank you, Audit Committee members. As you have the program in front of you, it's a very all-inclusive program. It's a lengthy objective to include all the takeaways that you all have discussed so far. So I'm going to read the objective, which is to conduct a comprehensive review of take-home vehicle usage within the fire, sheriff, and public works departments. The internal audit will focus on assessing compliance with policies, detecting inefficiencies, misuse, or noncompliance with regulations, suggesting enhancements to promote accountability, cost effectiveness, governance, and best practices alignment within the specified departments. That's a really long objective, but we feel very confident that we can meet that objective with the procedures noted below in the audit work program. I also do want to point out that we would be looking at assessing the risks listed here in the middle, the like 8 or 9 risks here, and they're all very doable within this audit program. So the procedures, there are roughly 8, and we anticipate being able to meet that audit objective, going through interviewing individuals, going through the data around the take-home vehicles, who has them, their usage, looking at maintenance logs, looking at patterns and assessing the activities against policies and regulations, and providing meaningful impact and recommendations on how to make the process better, more effective and more efficient. Any thoughts or questions on the audit program?
Are there any other suggestions or thoughts? No? I think the discussion that we had prior, I'm glad we had it in terms of some of the things to look at, whether, with fuel and shared expenses or
Yeah.
so that sounds great. Okay. Then, and Sherry, I do have a quick question. Has this happened before where we have approved or we're recommending moving forward prior to the Board of Soups formally approving?
Yes, pretty much every year for the last 3 years I've done this, and it's because we only meet quarterly as an audit committee. And so if we set the audit plan for next year, and then I wait for the Board of Supervisors to approve it, and then we have our next meeting, 3 months has already gone by, if not more, by the time we meet again, and then you review the audit program, and then they finally start their work. So this is a way that they can start procedures right away and not have to wait 3 or 4 months. So I pretty much do this every year.
Okay, so for the record, we're not running amok here.
No.
Okay. Thank you. So would someone like to make a motion?
I move to direct I. Bailey LLP and staff to proceed with the agreed-upon procedures as discussed on the record.
Is there a second?
And I would second that emotion.
Great. All in favor? Aye. And, no one is opposed, so it's unanimous. Great. All right. And Audrey, thank you for the very thorough list, the objective and the breakdown. I think this will be a great one.
You are welcome, and thank you.
Okay, now we are at item 5, or agenda item 5D, for discussion only, discussion regarding fiscal year 2024 audit work program update and hotline activity. So Sherry?
I know we just did this a month ago. It is a standing item though, so I wanted, if somebody did report something on the hotline in the last month, I did want Audrey, give her the chance to let us know about it, so. So I'll turn it
Yes,
over.
thank you. I'm glad that it is a standing item because we never know when we will have a hotline reported, incident reported. I did go in and monitor the hotline, and I do want to let you know there are no reports, no incidents have been reported. We did test the system as we do every year on an annual basis, and we did get a conclusive test where the report was received, and obviously it comes back through test internal audit, so nothing, no red flags go off, so it was all working just fine as intended. The internal audit plan we have concluded for fiscal year 23-24, and we were on target, on track, and on budget. We did not exceed 110,000. All audits were completed on time and on budget.
Great news. Thank you. Okay, and then, so we are now at agenda item 5E, for discussion only regarding dates for our next meeting.
Yeah, so I wanted to give Audrey enough time to complete this audit. So I was kind of in my head thinking sometime in October, November.
Mhm.
Does that give you time, Audrey?
Let's see, August, yes, yes, it does. October, November would be better, but we can make October work.
So this is also for bringing the rest of the audit programs back. So you want to do November, like maybe early November?
Yes, that would be perfect.
Okay. Let's not do election day. Let's
The
do
12th?
the 12th. Does that work
12th
for
of
everybody?
November.
That
All
work for
right.
everyone? Okay. Then our next meeting will be November 12th at 1:30. Is that correct?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Unless there's one. I don't anticipate a blizzard. All right. At this point, we are at public comment, and I do not see a public here. But if anyone has a comment as a public citizen versus a committee member, no? All right. Then we will adjourn. Thank you so much. Thank you, Audrey.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome and thank you.